This analysis and concluding trend forecast for UK house prices is excerpted from two articles published on the 30th of December 2013 at the Market Oracle website that aim to extend my existing house prices forecast of into mid-2014 all the way into the end of 2018, which are themselves excerpts from my new UK housing market ebook that can be downloaded for free from mid-January 2014. Also, remember to subscribe to my always free newsletter to be in receipt of regular updates, as well as subscribing to this YouTube channel. The coalition government's increasing measures aimed at igniting an election economic boom have started to materialize, as illustrated by the recent jump in UK GDP for Q3 2013 to 0.8%. Measures such as George Osborne's March announcement of the Help to Buy scheme that in my opinion will create a UK subprime housing bubble.
Help to Buy has two components. First, we're going to commit £3.5 billion of capital spending over the next 3 years to shared equity loans. From the beginning of next month, we will offer an equity loan worth up to 20% of the value of a new built home to anyone looking to move up the housing ladder. You put down a 5% deposit from your savings and the government will loan you a further 20%. The loan is interest-free for the first 5 years. It is repaid when the home is sold. Previous help was only available to those who were first-time buyers and who had family incomes below £60,000. Now help is available to all buyers of newly built homes on all incomes, available to anyone looking to get on or move up the housing ladder. And the only constraint will be that the home can't be worth more than £600,000, but this covers well over 90% of all homes.
The updated GDP growth graph illustrates that the UK economic recovery has been significantly weaker than I forecast 4 years ago in December 2009. However, going forward, I expect the economy to far outperform this forecast, where not only does GDP look destined to break above 3% for 2014, but could even achieve the holy grail of a 4% growth rate that virtually ensures a government election victory. This graph shows my original forecast trend trajectory for UK housing market valuation in terms of GDP. The updated graph shows that this indicator bottomed at 21% at the beginning of 2013. The key point is not where the indicator bottomed, but rather when, which unlike Labour's 1 year election bounce into May 2010, this election bounce will have 2.5 years to gain momentum and starts from a much lower valuation, therefore supporting my view that this bull market could last for the whole of the remainder of this decade. George Osborne has recently been busy making statements that the UK budget deficit will magically turn from minus 100 billion today to a small surplus by 2018. However, when compared to the original forecast by the government, this means that the coalition government will be some 4 years behind schedule in terms of deficit reduction. The updated graph shows that the UK has hit a deficit-cutting brick wall, as the government is finding it near impossible to reduce the budget deficit to under 100 billion per year, which translates into an extra 130 billion of debt to be added to Britain's debt mountain trend over this parliament. The debt to GDP ratio graph clearly illustrates the consequences of a persistently high budget deficit, that not only is the debt to GDP burden not going to be cut, but instead looks set to continue to increase towards at least 80% of GDP, as the truth is that all of the real terms economic growth during this parliament will be as a consequence of 550 billion of debt added to Britain's debt mountain, the consequences of which is inflation. My analysis of July 2012 explained that the concept of the quantum of quantitative easing amounts to the effective cancellation of one-third of UK government debt as the Bank of England repays the interest received on the debt held by the Bank of England back to the government. Therefore, the real UK debt to GDP ratio appears to have been systematically engineered to stay at a constant 41% of GDP against actual of 77%, which I expect to remain constant at 41% into March 2015 as a consequence of the effective cancellation of approximately 600 billion or 40% of outstanding government debt by March 2015. The consequences of government deficit spending, debt printing, QQE monetization programs is to feed the exponential inflation megatrend. The latest UK inflation data shows CPI falling to 2.1%. However, the headline inflation rate that the mainstream press focuses upon masks the truth of what is an exponential inflation megatrend, which is the primary consequences of perpetual money and debt printing monetization programs. Most people are likely to be unaware of the inflation consequences in terms of the stealth loss of purchasing power of the British pound, which is now worth less than 40% of its value of 25 years ago, as government inflation policies continue to relentlessly erode its value all the way towards zero. For savers, consequences of the exponential inflation megatrend, stealth theft of wealth, is worsened by the 20 to 40% additional theft by means of double taxation on savings interest, i.e. inflation steals the value of your savings by currently about 1.5% per annum, then the government taxes the sub-inflation interest rate on savings by another 20 to 40%, which means that savers are guaranteed to lose near 2% of the value of their savings per year that over the past 5 years amounts to over 8% having been stolen, and on the real inflation measure over 16%. My last analysis of June 2010 concluded in a real terms house prices trend trajectory towards the bottom by the start of 2012. The updated graph shows that house prices in real terms bottomed on Q and implies that a real terms UK housing bull market is underway that could last the remainder of this decade and average at least 10% per annum. The full extensive analysis continues with population growth, house building, unemployment, wages, mortgage debt and affordability, and is expanded even further in my new UK housing market ebook. For instance, that the population graph illustrates out of control immigration. UK house prices, as measured by the Halifax, are currently rising at a rate of 8.5% per annum, as opposed to falling at a rate of over 2% per annum over a year ago when I flagged that an imminent UK housing multi-year bull market was probable. The house prices trend trajectory continues to home in on an average inflation rate of 10% per annum for 2014. My housing market analysis suggests that we are unlikely to experience a rerun of the last housing bull market, i.e. we are not going to see average prices rising anywhere near 30% per annum. Instead, we are likely to see prices oscillate around 10% per annum, which translates into an acceleration beyond 10% into the May 2015 general election, followed by a sharp slowdown during 2016 that will lay the ground for the next surge higher during 2017 and 18. Therefore, in conclusion, my UK house prices forecast is for the Halifax non-seasonally adjusted house prices index to target a trend to an average price of £270,600 by the end of 2018, which represents a 55% price rise on the most recent Halifax prices data of £174,671 for November. Again, note that this analysis in this video is merely an excerpt from the total analysis in arriving at this trend forecast, so do refer to my UK housing market ebook, which will be available for free download from the middle of January 2014. For implications of this house prices forecast towards the outcome of the next general election, then ensure you are subscribed to my YouTube channel for an update on my next video, as well as ongoing updates on the housing and other market forecasts throughout 2014.